Night fell early over Denmark. Fog rolled in thick as wool, swallowing the forest, deadening every sound. Only one place remained alive in that darkness: Hero, the greatest mead hall ever built. Its golden roof caught the moonlight, glowing like a beacon of warmth and life in a world that seemed half asleep. Inside, warriors drank, laughed, shouted songs. Their joy was loud, reckless, almost defiant, but something else heard them, something far beyond the trees, something ancient, something starved. Deep in the swamp, the reeds began to shiver. A shadow rose from the black water. A low gurgling breath rattled the still air. Something massive lumbered forward, dripping sludge, dragging long claws through the mud. It listened to the laughter coming from Hero, and it hated it. That night, 30 men were torn apart before they could even scream. Their bodies were never found. For 12 long years, the monster returned night after night, ripping doors from hinges, shredding warriors like meat, leaving nothing but blood and shattered shields behind. No blade could hurt it. No wall could stop it. No prayer could calm it. Hero had become a house of fear, and a kingdom was dying. Before we begin, if you love stories like these, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment with your thoughts. It really helps us bring you more stories like this one. Across the sea, in Geatland, men whispered of the horror across the water. Some called it Grendel. Some called it a demon. Others refused to give it a name at all. But one man listened and did not turn away: Beowulf. A warrior whose strength was legendary even in childhood, a man who had fought creatures in the deep and survived storms meant to kill entire crews. When he heard the news, he did not hesitate. He simply said, "Make ready a ship." Dawn broke in red streaks across the sea as Beowulf and 14 chosen warriors slipped through the fog. A cold wind howled across the waves. Even the gulls were silent, as though they sensed what waited in Denmark. Hours turned to days, days turned to nights. But then, faint on the horizon, a golden roof glimmered. Hero. The Hall of Endless Feasts. The Hall of Endless Death. On the cliffs, Danish sentries stared in disbelief. No ship had come willingly in years. When Beowulf stepped onto the shore, tall, armored, eyes bright, the guards felt something they hadn't felt in a long time. A sliver of hope, and maybe a sliver of fear. Beowulf and his men were welcomed with trembling gratitude. Hrolfr, the aging king who had watched his kingdom be devoured piece by piece, greeted the young hero with shaking hands. "You know of the terror?" the king asked. "I came for it," Beowulf replied. That night, Hrolfr ordered a feast unlike any in years. Food, drink, music, anything to drown out the dread. But under the smoke and warmth of the roaring fires, tension clung to the air like ice. Warriors flinched at every shift of shadow. Eyes darted to the massive doors again and again. Some drank until they couldn't stand, terrified of being awake when Grendel came. Beowulf noticed everything: the trembling hands, the haunted eyes, the desperate laughter. But most of all, he noticed the silence outside. A silence too deep, too heavy, too alive. And Firth, jealous and drunk, mocked Beowulf. But even his taunts sounded weak, cracked by fear. Beowulf smiled calmly. "I'll face the creature with no sword," he said. "Just my hands. I will match its strength with my own." A murmur spread. Who faced a demon with bare hands? Only someone who truly believed he could win, or someone dead inside already. As the feast dwindled and the fire faded to embers, warriors lay down to sleep. But Beowulf did not sleep. He sat in the center of the hall, eyes open, breath steady. Waiting. Outside, the wind died. And then, something else moved. The first sound was small, the faint splashing far off, like something huge dragging itself from water. Then came the footsteps. Heavy. Slow. Wet. They stopped outside Hero. Silence. Then, with a bone-shaking boom, the massive doors were slammed open. Grendel stepped inside. A towering, twisted shape, skin swollen and cracked, oozing black blood, eyes glowing with a sickly yellow light, claws as long as swords. A smell like rotting earth and old corpses. The monster inhaled deeply, savoring the scent of warm flesh. Beowulf stayed perfectly still. Grendel grabbed the first sleeping warrior and bit him in half with a crunch that echoed through the hall. Blood spilled across the floor in a steaming pool. Another warrior woke screaming before Grendel crushed his skull like fruit. Then the creature turned and stared at Beowulf, its lips peeled back, revealing jagged teeth. It reached for him with dripping claws. And Beowulf moved. His hand shot out like lightning, gripping Grendel's wrist. The monster recoiled confused. No human had ever stopped him. He roared, a sound that shook the hall, and swung his other arm down with killing force. Beowulf caught that too. The struggle began. Tables shattered. Supports cracked. The entire structure rocked as man and monster fought with the strength of angry gods. Grendel tried to tear free, but Beowulf held on, tightening his grip like an iron trap. Grendel's arm began to stretch, here, rip. And with one final wrench, Beowulf ripped the arm clean from the socket. Blood spattered across the walls. Grendel shrieked, a sound so horrifying it seemed to freeze time itself. He fled into the darkness, howling in agony, dragging himself back toward the marshes where he would die, for the first time in years. Dawn came to Hero, and men lived to see it. That morning, the severed arm hung above Hero as proof that the terror had ended. People filled the hall again, this time with real, wild joy. Warriors laughed without fear. Bards sang about Beowulf's strength, but in the corners, old men murmured prayers. Mothers clutched children. Some refused to approach the hall at all, because they knew no monster like Grendel walks the world alone. Night fell, and beneath the black surface of the lake, something stirred, something older, something colder, something filled with a grief too deep to name. She rose slowly from the water, a monstrous shape with a face that shifted between anguish and rage. Her hair writhed like kelp. Her clothes scraped ancient runes into the rocks as she climbed. She had no name men dared speak. They only knew her as Grendel's mother, and she would have her revenge. Hero slept again, but this time, even Beowulf sensed something wrong. A chill crept into the hall. The fires coughed and dimmed. The shadows seemed too deep, too heavy. Then a scream split the night. By the time Beowulf reached the doors, it was too late. Grendel's mother had already taken Esker, Hrolfr's trusted advisor, ripping him through the hall like a rag doll, vanishing into the dark forest before anyone could strike her. The king collapsed in grief. His voice cracked as he begged to Beowulf, I cannot survive another sun rising stained with blood. Find her. And her. Beowulf nodded. We go to the lake. The next morning, mist hung thick as breath. Hrolfr's warriors led Beowulf to the marsh where the water always churned, even with no wind. At the shoreline, lying on the stones, was Esker's severed head. Warriors stepped back in fear. The smell rising from the water was suffocating, like a graveyard left to rot under the sun, and Firth offered Beowulf a massive sword, haunting the blade said to never fail in war. His voice trembled as he handed it over. Beowulf accepted. Then, with no hesitation, he leapt into the lake. The water did not welcome him. Shapes closed in immediately, monstrous shadows, teeth glinting in the murk. Hands clawed at him, dragging him downward like anchors. He fought through them, striking, kicking, tearing free as the pressure in his lungs built. Down and down he fell, into a darkness deeper than death. Suddenly a fire, a glow beneath the water like molten gold. Beowulf's feet hit solid ground. He found himself in a massive cavern carved from stone and bone. Pillars twisted upward into darkness like ribs of some ancient beast. And there she stood, Grendel's mother. She moved with a nerving fluidity, part woman, part creature, part nightmare formed from sorrow itself. Her eyes locked onto Beowulf, burning with a hatred older than kingdoms. She struck. Beowulf swung, grunting. The legendary sword shattered on her hide like cheap glass. The battle turned brutal. She clawed him across the face, lifting him off the ground, hurling him through a stack of skulls that cracked under his weight. His armor bent. His breath turned ragged. His blood mixed with the water dripping from the ceiling. For the first time, fear scraped at his spine. This creature was no mere beast. She was grief given form. She was vengeance carved into flesh. But as she lunged a final time, Beowulf saw something. The sword. Not human-made but giant's blade, enormous, ancient, half buried in the stone. A weapon forged for gods. He seized it with both hands. Weight nearly crushed him, but with one desperate roar, Beowulf swung the blade in a massive arc. The sword cut through her neck. Silence followed. Then her body collapsed, shaking the cavern. The blade began melting from the poison in her blood as Beowulf staggered to his feet. He took only one trophy, Grendel's severed head. When he returned to the surface, dripping blood and black water, men stared in awe and terror. Beowulf returned to Geatland a hero. Time passed. Battles were fought. Kings died. And Beowulf eventually took the throne. He ruled wisely, boldly, without fear. For 50 winters, peace reigned. But peace never lasts. Far from any village, in a forgotten barrow buried under centuries of dust, a dragon slept atop a mountain of treasure. Its scales were black as void. Its wings curled like shadows. Smoke rose slowly from its nostrils, whispering ancient hatred. One night, a desperate slave crept into the mound and stole a single cup. Just one cup, but to the dragon, that cup was everything, the symbol of a hoard it had guarded for generations. Its eyes opened. The ground trembled. Fire lit the darkness. The dragon rose. And the world burned. Villages turned to ash. Bones littered fields. Smoke blotted out the sky. Beowulf knew what he must do. "This is my battle," he said. "No one else carries this burden." But one young warrior, Wiglaf, refused to let him stand alone. Together they marched to the dragon's barrow as night fell. The air quivered with heat. The rocks glowed red. The earth felt alive, rumbling with something terrible beneath its surface. Then the dragon emerged, a mountain of wings and talons, eyes burning like two suns, fire coiling in its throat. It let out a roar that shook the world. Beowulf charged. The dragon unleashed a river of fire. Shields melted. Armor glowed red. Beowulf's old sword snapped against the beast's scales. Useless. His warriors fled, all except Wiglaf. With smoke burning his lungs, with death inches from his face, Wiglaf thrust his blade under the dragon's wing. The only soft place. The beast shrieked and turned, jaws opening wide. And Beowulf, with the last strength in his ancient body, plunged his dagger deep into the dragon's throat. The creature convulsed. Crashed to the ground. Dead. The fires burned lower. The night went still. But Beowulf's breathing grew slow. Wiglaf caught him as he fell. Venom pulsed through Beowulf's veins, cold as ice. His vision dimmed as the stars blurred overhead. "My people," he whispered, "protect them. Build me a barrow on the cliff, where sailors may remember my name." His hand fell limp. The king was dead, and the world felt colder. The Geats built a great funeral pyre. Flames roared into the night. Warriors wept and sang of his courage, but their voices trembled, for they knew what his death meant. The age of heroes was ending. Darkness would come again, and there would be no Beowulf to face it. But high on a cliff above the sea stands a mound of stone, a barrow lit by wind and moonlight, where a king sleeps forever. A king who fought monsters in the dark, a king who never feared death, a king whose name will never fall into shadow. Beowulf.